Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we have got a special episode today. Obviously, this isn't going to be our daily news and notes episode. This is going to be a little bit longer, more of a marathon type of podcast because we are partnering with our full BIG Banter Sports network on board for us today to talk through our predictions for the Big Ten. But right now, here with me, I have our CEO, Brant of Big Ten Sports. Brant, how you doing today?
Fantastic, JR. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to get the ball rolling with this episode. First time we're really going to have almost the entire network together on an episode. So excited to kind of give you a preview of not only the Big Ten season that's upcoming, but also what we got in store at Big Banter. It's going to be a lot of fun.
For sure. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a challenge going on with this, right?
There is. So all of our 14 podcasts have provided record predictions for each of the 14 teams, along with a few picks for Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year within the Big Ten, and then Heisman predictions and CFP predictions. So we've got a little scale going on. For each point that you're off the mark on each team, you get -1 point. For each correctly guessed Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, or Defensive Player of the Year, +5 points. +8 for guessing the Heisman correct, and +3 for each correct CFP team. And whichever pod has the best score there at the end of the season is going to bring home the Big Banter title belt. So a lot of bragging rights there.
For sure. And we all know that in the Big Ten, the bragging rights, that's what matters most. So, but here at the Big Ten Huddle, we just like to bring everybody in and talk through stuff. We love our banter. We love talking through everything that goes on. So if you like this episode and you like the guests that we have on, join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings. I post the podcast super early in the morning. So if you're waking up for work at like 3 a.m., boom, it's going to be there for you. It's going to be ready. You can follow all of your favorite team shows with the Big Banter Sports. But first, we have a new show that we would like to introduce. So we're going to have two other guys come in and talk through their new show that's coming on. We have Tyler Forker and Brandon Jensen to talk through Big Bookie. Tyler, Brandon, when do you want to talk about what Big Bookie is for us?
You want to take care of that, Tyler?
Yeah, I can take care of it. So basically with Big Bookie, we wanted to come out with our own kind of sports book for Big Banter, specifically focusing on all of our Big Ten teams and having some of our Big Ten podcasts come on and have special introductions or just hearing their bets. So it's really just going to be our favorite locks of the week. It can be overs, unders, total points, spreads, whatever you need, we're going to have it. And we also have a few new segments that we're excited to roll out once we get started.
For sure. That's awesome. I can't wait to listen to the Big Bookie podcast talking through that stuff. But just to give us a taste today, guys, Brandon, we'll start with you. Put your foot down on a bet this year for the Big Ten. What is something that you're like, this is my lock, this is what I'm riding with? Give us one to start off.
I'll scream it to the heavens, and I will continue to do it. Wisconsin over 8.5 wins. There's not even 4 losses on the schedule, even remotely close. Ohio State comes to Madison. They miss Penn State. They miss Michigan. I mean, all their big games are at home. They go to Purdue, Washington State. You know how big these road games can be, and they don't have any. So I would like to say they would flirt with double-digit wins easily. They're my Big Ten West champion. They bring in Tanner Mordecai from SMU with the air raid offense coming into Wisconsin, something we have not seen in maybe ever. It is going to be an exciting team. They're going to be fun. I love them to go over 8.5.
And I can't wait to see what Braylon Allen does with that air raid offense. As much as they do throw the ball, they also run it quite a bit. So he's going to be fed there, and it's going to be
100%
going to be fun to see for sure. Tyler, what are you putting your foot down on?
So this may be a little controversial, but I'm going to go Michigan State over 5.5 wins. I know last year they did not get over that mark, and they don't have a lot of weapons that may jump off the screen, but I think it's going to be in the trenches. Their offense and defensive line have taken big steps this offseason, and they have a quarterback battle going on up in East Lansing. So I think with their schedule, they're going to be able to get it done, get to that 6-win mark, and really be a formidable opponent within the West.
For sure, man. That is a bit controversial. I know for them losing to IU at the end of the season last year, I think they got a bad taste in their mouth. And I don't think Mel Tucker likes much of the talk that's been coming from the Michigan fan base. So, I think that could all culminate together, and I like the pick. It's interesting. But just a few days from now, we have Nebraska, we have Minnesota, we have an awesome game that I'm sure we'll preview throughout this episode. But looking at the plays for that game, Brandon, we'll start with you again. What are some of your plays for that game?
So I'm going to have 3 plays for that game. I'm a Matt Rule guy, so these are Nebraska plays. First play is going to be Nebraska plus 7.5. I love them. That half a point is huge. I would play it to plus 7, but I think they come out early. And they come out firing. Matt Rule is getting these guys ready to go. Nebraska back to glory. Maybe not yet, but they're going to have them guys ready to go in the first half easily, which is why I'm going to take plus 3.5 in the first half as well. And I'm going to parlay that with Jeff Sims anytime touchdown and Jeff Sims over rushing total. It's not out yet. I don't know what the odds will be, but I think that's a great, fantastic play for us. And then I will also be taking Nebraska to score in the first quarter at minus 135.
Love it. I'm a huge Matt Rule guy too, and I think I told somebody the other day I wouldn't be surprised if they go 10-2 this season. And it gave me a bit of a weird look, but maybe not as weird of a look as Tyler gets with his 5.5 Michigan State. So Tyler, if you have a hot take for this Minnesota-Nebraska.
Not quite a hot take. I'm definitely going to be tailing Brandon on that plus 7.5. I think after last year going over and losing to Northwestern, there is no way that Nebraska doesn't come out and lay down the law against Minnesota. I think it's going to be a beatdown, and I love that 7.5 line.
Awesome, for sure. Well, hey, while we have the last minute or two here, go ahead and plug the socials for where people can find the Big Bookie Podcast. Let us know where can we find you out there.
Yeah, so we'll be on Twitter. We'll be dropping. It'll be under Big Bookie. So we'll be dropping those weekly for the Big Bookie, and we'll have a week 1 episode dropping sometime next week. We haven't ironed out when, probably on Friday. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, we're really excited. Let's win some money.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. That's the goal. Let Tyler and Brandon win you some money this season. Pay attention to the Big Bookie Podcast. We'll have a ton of fun. Any final thoughts, guys?
I think we're all set. I think we're good to go. Ready to win some money this season. Let's do it.
All right, good deal. Hey, thanks, guys. We are going to transition now to our Illinois predictions. So we are going to have Eric and Austin. I apologize, not Sonny. We have Eric and Austin in here. Before we get into that, though, guys, let me ask you just real fast. Answer it for me. Do any Big Ten West players have a chance to win the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year award this year? It just not saying they will, but any chances of anybody out there you guys think?
Go ahead, Austin.
Junior, I can't really hear you right now at the moment. I can hear Eric, but not you.
Interesting. I'll go first then, Austin, while you work on that, because I can hear JR just fine. I got one guy that is interesting to me, JR. It's Tanner Mordecai. He's had great numbers. He's a 6-year senior. Great numbers. He had 7,000 yards passing, 70 touchdowns in the past 2 years at SMU. He's a 6-year senior. Moving to Wisconsin. There's not a ton of returning quarterbacks in the Big Ten, a lot of new gunslingers. We see the new direction that the Badgers are going. I'm high on Wisconsin, just like Brandon Jensen was in his prediction. I think Tanner Mordecai's got a shot to put up some numbers that they've not seen in Madison before, or that they see very often in the Big Ten West. That's kind of my sleeper offensive player of the year out there.
Hey, awesome. All right, Austin, can you hear me at all right now? No.
Right. Since he can't hear you, Austin, the question was, is there anybody in the Big Ten West that could be offensive player of the year in your mind in the Big Ten?
Not at this moment. I think that offensive player belongs in that last game of the season. I think it's either going to be Blake Corum or Marvin Harrison Jr. or J.J. McCarthy. I think it's just one of those 3 guys that's going to be the offensive player of the year. The Big Ten West just doesn't lend itself to too many offensive player of the years. So that's why I don't think that it's going to happen within this division in the final year. I think it's just all going to be within that Big Ten East.
All right, I love it. Hey, Eric, why don't you go ahead and start with us with our Illinois predictions? You have Illinois at 6-6, barely squeak into a bowl game. Can you tell us a little bit about that schedule for us?
Yeah, so Austin, the question is our Illinois predictions as far as the records, and I went with 6-6, which I'm sure that you're going to completely disagree with. But here's my reasoning why. Brett Bielema went 5-7 in 2021, first year there. It was kind of a surprise to everybody that he kind of turned things around as quickly as he did there. Last year, 8-4, a tremendous year for him and for the Illini, best year they've had in quite some time. They lost kind of their odd identity on offense, in my opinion, with quarterback Tommy DeVito and running back Chase Brown, who was just hand it to him 20, 30, shoot 35 times a game, and he was going to pick up those yards. And really, Illinois won a lot of football games in a phone booth. And so I think that identity that the Illini had on offense is one thing. They also lost both Alex offensive linemen named Alex Pajewski or Pazuski. You help me with that.
Palczewski. There we go.
Palczewski. Thank you. And Alex Filstrom. So finding enough offense to win in those close games that they're going to have in the West, I think is going to be a little bit of a coin flip for them this year. And then if you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, they lost pretty much their entire defensive backfield. That was legitimately awesome last year. Now that defensive line is for real. It is for real there in Illinois. We've been preaching that on our podcast, but replacing those guys and then keeping that level of where they were is not going to be easy, especially when you kind of look at, what they have in the schedule. The West seems to kind of be a coin flip. I feel 6-6 and getting back to a bowl game is a really good year when you're replacing all of those pieces. That's just kind of how I feel there. Austin, what's your prediction on your team you cover, man?
I mean, the Illini are winning the Big Ten West. I don't think it's really even that much of a conversation, in all honesty.
Really?
I mean, you look at Wisconsin, they add Luke Fickell. Yes, they have a great quarterback coming in, but they're changing their entire identity overnight. And teams that do that tend to struggle that next year. So I think that you look at what Illinois brings to the table: a great offensive line, an offensive line that continues to build upon itself in the Brett Bielema image. And you talked about Chase Brown, the running back. With Wisconsin, he changed over running backs a lot, and they were still successful year after year after year after year. So the offensive identity for Illinois is set. Defensively, in the Big Ten West, there's only going to be one air raid style offense, and that's going to be with the Wisconsin Badgers. So that's why I'm not too concerned about what the defensive backfield will bring. I think when you look at that defensive line of Illinois, I don't think there's that many teams that are better in the country right now. So if you combine all those factors, I don't see in a world where the Big Ten West, yes, they might get shellacked by an Ohio State. Yes, they might get shellacked by a Michigan in Indianapolis. But I look at the Big Ten West, I don't see that many competitors that are like truly at eye level of what Illinois is going to bring this season. So that's why I have them 10-2 and winning the Big Ten West.
Wow, that's crazy. Eric, that is quite the difference from you. Tell us where Austin is wrong. Go ahead and let us know.
When's Illinois done it? I mean, last year was 8-4. They went 8-5 after the bowl game, and it was their best year since Juice Williams was quarterback that I can remember. Brett Bielema is consistent. I'll give you that. I commend him for turning around their program as quickly as he has, but I just see that there's a little bit of a regression to the mean. You didn't mention Iowa. They're better. I think Wisconsin is going to be better than what they were last year. Minnesota is consistent. I think that's a coin flip. And those are
Minnesota hasn't beat Illinois in 2 years. Okay. When Minnesota beats Illinois again, that's whenever I'll take them seriously again in the Big Ten West.
When's the last time you guys beat Purdue?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And
yes,
I'm not
they've
even
had struggles there.
And I'm not even bringing up the Boilermakers because they got a new coach, and I'm not as high on them as a lot of other people are as well. But I'm just saying I don't think Illinois is is 10-2 material. I don't see it. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I would like to play Illinois and Indiana because I think that's an auto W for the Buckeyes. But I don't know, man. I think you guys are going to have more trouble with the Wisconsin, the Iowas, and the West than what you're portraying there.
I mean, we beat Wisconsin last year. We beat Iowa last year. We beat Nebraska last year. And some of those teams are starting back at square one. So that's why I'm not too concerned over what Illinois' Big Ten West schedule brings in front of them. Ryan Walters is going to come into a problematic situation at Purdue. I think that's going to be a dub. So again, there's just not too many competitors that have the consistency that Illinois has brought from last year to this year, even with the losses of Devin Witherspoon and Chase Brown. But I will ask you this, is Tom Allen of Indiana on the hot seat?
Yes, definitely. I think
perfect transition for our next team of Indiana. I love it. Thanks, Austin, for getting there. And I know arrogant Ohio State fan, as most of the Big Ten will see him, Eric, will have a hot take on that for sure. Eric, what's your hot take on that?
On Tom Allen having been on the hot seat?
Yes.
Oh, his butt's on fire, dude. He can love everyone that he wants. He can love the entire state of Indiana. He can even love Purdue and Notre Dame in his own state. It doesn't matter. They are completely on a rebuild. You want to talk about teams that are rebuilding. That's the team that has been consistently on the rebuild, it seems like. But now they're trying to institute a new quarterback. They have zero, and I mean zero depth there at Indiana. They come out, they play hard for 2.5, 3 quarters, and then the depth catches up with them. They are usually 1, 2, or 3 injuries away from being obsolete in the conference, because if it just takes 1 or 2 of their top guys going down on offense and defense, next thing you know, the Hoosiers aren't there. Now they'll start the year off strong. It seems like they'll come up, they'll surprise somebody. They'll play Ohio State strong at the beginning of the year. They shocked Penn State, I think it was a couple years ago. But this is not the same Indiana team that took advantage of the COVID year and shocked everybody. The best player Indiana's had, in my opinion, in a long time is fighting for a Heisman out in Washington this year. I just think Indiana is on the bottom of the Big Ten, in my opinion, and definitely in the East, if not the entire conference. At the end of this year, Tom Allen will be looking for a new job. And it might be he takes his little LEO, love everyone, over to Evanston, Illinois, to be the Northwestern's head coach, because, listen, he's got experience in the Big Ten. He turned around Indiana once, and if they need love anywhere in the Big Ten, it's in Evanston right now. I think he would be actually a really good fit for Northwestern if they can't get things turned around enough this year to keep who they've got.
Yeah, I think Tom Allen is donezo at Indiana because, yes, he's built a great relationship with Indiana high school coaches, but that top talent is still going to the likes of Michigan. They're going to Ohio State. They're going to an SEC program of the hour, who was ever showing them the most love. I mean, it's a tough road to hoe if you're Tom Allen at Indiana in getting that top talent to stay in Bloomington, because you also have Notre Dame. You also have Purdue in that same state. And those programs are on the rise. And once you lose momentum in college football, it is very tough to get it back. So I think Tom Allen is going to be probably with Ryan Day or Jim Harbaugh as an analyst after this final year, because I think with Big Ten money, I think Northwestern can get almost anybody they would want after this year is over and the interim status is done. So Indiana, I have them at 2-10 this upcoming season. I think it's just way too difficult in that division, and I think non-conference wise, I think it might be a little difficult for themselves as well. So Indiana, they're in deep trouble. They need to hit that complete reset button on their PlayStation and start the process over, because it's kind of over right now. Man, not a lot of hope for IU this season, which is it's just troublesome. But maybe a new coach will bring that fire in there and help them. They have to be Indiana State. They have to be Akron. Just two games that you cannot afford to lose at all. And who knows? Maybe they will surprise another Michigan State. Maybe they will do something else like that. Who knows? So, all right, Austin, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. We are going to move Austin out of here now, and we are going
going to bring in we're going to bring in a couple others to talk through the Ohio State predictions. We have Ashley from Northwestern, right, Ashley?
Yes, that's correct.
There we go, the Wild Chat, and we have Adam here as well. Thanks so much for coming in, guys, as we talk through Ohio State. Let me start with this, Eric, and go ahead and just give us all of your Ohio State wisdom and knowledge here. There has not been an offensive player that is not a quarterback or running back since 2004 with Braylon Edwards to win the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. Give us your argument really fast for Marvin Harrison Jr.
His dad's a Hall of Famer, and he's better than his dad was in college.
That could add to
it. Name me one other wide receiver in college football right now who has anywhere near the clout that he's got.
Not the clout. That's for sure. Adam, Ashley, you all have any thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr. for Offensive Player of the Year?
I mean, for me, guy's just a baller. It really comes down to that. What he does with that offense, there's just so much talent that he has. And when you look at, the other players in college football with similar skill levels, I think he's the guy. It really just comes down to that. And I think he brings a lot to the table over there at Ohio State.
Ashley, your thoughts?
Yeah. Honestly, I can't disagree with Adam. I mean, there's just a lot of talent on that team. So, yeah, I mean, Adam kind of said everything that I think I would have said, but yeah, we're kind of sharing a brain right now. There's just so much talent on that team, and yeah, he does bring a lot to the table.
Marvin Harrison's work ethic, JR, is incredible. That's the thing, that his work ethic is incredible. So the other night, the media met with the wide receivers after practice. All the wide receivers after practice come over. The media is asking a question. Marvin Harrison's still in the practice facility practicing. The media gets 10, 15 minutes with each wide receiver. They leave. They're done. Marvin's still practicing. They're asking, do we get to interview Marvin? Marvin says, yeah, I'll be done in 15 minutes. He practiced an extra 30 minutes because he had one drop during the practice.
Wow.
That's what you're dealing with this guy.
And his first drop last year was against Michigan, right?
Yeah, he's a perfectionist.
Yeah, that's wild. That is wild. And I think the other big piece of it that not everybody's talking about that can add to this is that with that ongoing QB battle, you might not see the star QB from Ohio State that is just kind of like, because I think it's been the past 4 or 5 years or something, and Ohio State QB has won that award. So it's kind of similar thing with what happened with the Heisman with Devontae Smith back in 2020, where Mac Jones really wasn't the star that Devontae Smith was, and it kind of led him to that. So, all right, well, hey, Eric, go ahead and let us know about the Ohio podcast before we get too much into it.
Sure. So we are the Ohio State representative on Big Banter. We're extremely proud about that, excited for that. We just got done with all 14 Big Ten previews, including the Northwestern Wildcats. Thank you, Ashley and Adam from Wild Chat, for being part of that. And so go check us out on YouTube at The Ohio Podcast on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at The Ohio Pod. We have over 8,000 followers on Facebook, so you can look us up on Facebook at The Ohio Podcast. And if you can't find any of that, just go to Big Banter's website, bigbantersports.com. Look up Ohio State, and we're there for you, man.
Awesome.
We go every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, live. Be a part of the live show every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Right. And I think last time you were on, you said you have chat or call-in shows coming up during the season, right?
That's right.
Awesome. Well, that'll be fun. So head on over there, check it out. And we'll get to the Wild Chat soon, but we're going to talk some Ohio State predictions right now. Eric, what does the season look like for you?
For me, it boils down to two things. Number one, does the quarterback and the offensive line, whoever the quarterback's going to be, because we still don't know, do they gel well enough to give this offense a chance with the weapons that you have, like Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, former number one recruit Julian Fleming, one of the top recruits in this class, and Carnell Tate, a healthy Travion Henderson at running back, the deepest running back room Ohio State has had since the 90s. When Eddie George was your Heisman Trophy winner running back. This offense has got tons of weapons, but that offensive line, can they gel well enough, and do we have the right signal caller to score enough points? And then on the flip side of that, this is probably on paper the best defense Ohio State's had since 2019 when they had Chase Young, Jeffrey Okudah, and all of those All-Americans playing on that defensive side of the ball. So it boils down to this, JR. At the end of the season, can you beat your rival and win the Big Ten? If you can't, then it doesn't matter how many stars your recruits have. Doesn't matter if you won 11 games or not up until that point. If you don't win that game and you don't win the Big Ten, then the season was a failure. And you heard it here. Ryan Day will be on the hot seat at that point.
Hard to imagine Tom Allen and Ryan Day on the hot seat together.
Right?
Yeah. Tom Allen goes 10-2 and he's on this hot seat, and Ryan Day could go or 2-10. Sorry, Ryan Day could go 10-2 and be on the hot seat. Tom Allen could go 2-10 and be on the hot seat. That is quite the difference. But we did have Wild Chat predict that Ohio State would go 10-2. So Ashley, you want to start us off? What's the weakness you see here that would have them go 10-2?
Yeah, sure. So we were when we were talking, me, Adam, and our other co-host Dylan, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, we were thinking about college football and all its craziness. And so we kind of predicted a little bit of a crazy scenario for Ohio State, which I'll let Adam get into part of it later. But we predicted losses. We predicted an early loss against Notre Dame, and we predicted a late loss against Michigan at the end. We were thinking a close game against Michigan, go to the very end, something would happen. Maybe last-minute field goal, sort of similar to what happened last year, New Year's Eve / New Year's Day. Maybe something like that, losing a really close game to Michigan towards the end. And then we were thinking that in order to actually make the college football playoffs, they would have to win the rest of the games in the blowout in order to be ranked high enough to get there. That's just sort of the craziness that we were thinking of. I don't know, Adam, if you want to add anything else that we talked about, but that was sort of the summary of it.
Yeah, so I think our thinking was, number one, what's Big Banter all about? Some crazy takes. So let's just see where this goes. Number two, I mean, we've kind of mentioned it a couple times, but the quarterback situation at Ohio State right now is still up in the air. And you don't really, when you have two quarterbacks, you don't really have any quarterbacks. So I'm personally still waiting to see what happens there. So, against a good team like Notre Dame in the fourth week of the season, the first kind of real test for Ohio State, who knows if they have a quarterback by then? Who knows if they don't? Who knows if one quarterback kind of elevated themselves? And probably by then they have. But let's say they just lose that game, right? And then, they'd have to kind of blow out Maryland, Purdue. Penn State would have to be a really, really big win. And then Wisconsin, too, would also have to be a really big win to kind of get back into that college football playoff scenario. But looking at the other top teams, just let's say in the top 25 AP poll right now, I can't really say that I'm in love with any of the other teams as locks for the college football playoff. Of course, Georgia and Michigan in the scenario I'd have, but Alabama, we saw what happened last year. They're worse than they were last year, I'd say. LSU and teams like USC, I'm not in love with as locks right now for the college football playoff. If you look at their schedules, I think there's easily 2 losses in those teams. So when it comes down to 2 loss teams potentially making the college football playoff, why not Ohio State, right? We talked about their talented defense. They've definitely got the piece on offense. And at the end of the day, they're a team that AP poll voters love. So I would say Ohio State still sneaks in there with 2 losses. Sure, it'd be crazy. It'd be a little bit unprecedented. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And hey, why not?
What do you think, Eric? You think 2-loss Ohio State in the college football playoffs? Surely the rational Ohio State fans would just be totally fine with that, right, Eric?
No, we wouldn't. No, we would not. I can see a nightmare scenario where Ohio State goes 8-4 this year. If they don't get that offensive line straightened out and they don't have a quarterback like Adam's bringing up, yeah, you're going to lose to Notre Dame. You're probably going to lose at Wisconsin at night. That's a crazy trap game that I'm worried about. You're probably going to lose to Penn State, and you're probably going to lose that team up north if you don't have those things straightened out. But that's a crazy scenario. That's a nightmare scenario. I think Ohio State's 11-1. I think Michigan goes 11-1. I think Penn State goes 11-1. We all beat each other. And I also think Wisconsin goes 11-1. I think there could be 4 Big Ten teams at the end of the year vying for those 4 college football playoff spots. And again, crazy prediction. This is Big Banter. I think 3 Big Ten teams get into the college football playoff this year. Unprecedented, just would be absolutely insane. And I would love to just collect every single SEC tier when that happens.
Yeah, that'd be really sending a shot to the Tennessee fans last year that thought that was going to happen with the SEC. I know I heard them saying Georgia and Bama and Tennessee, and they just about did it. So you never know. As long as Penn State doesn't have an absolute failure like Tennessee last year, having 63 points scored on them at the end of the year.
Right.
I don't even know what team could do that. They have Michigan State. I don't know.
I don't know that there is one in the Big Ten this year that can do that.
I look at their schedule and they have Ohio State, Michigan. Those are about the only two teams on their schedule I think are capable of scoring 63 points against a Big Ten team. And of course, Northwestern as well, right? Right.
That's right. There you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, awesome. We'll go ahead and we will send Eric and Ashley and Adam on. Thanks so much for coming on, talking about the Ohio State predictions, guys. We will visit with the Northwestern side of everything here later on. But right now, we are going to bring on Spartan Dog to talk about Purdue, and Brant is going to come back and talk through some of the points for our Boiler Express podcast, who's not able to be here. But before we get too far into that, I do want to know, is Ryan Walters a real contender for Big Ten Coach of the Year this year? Brant, your thoughts?
I'd say if you were to ask the Boiler Express podcast, they'd undoubtedly say absolutely. And I mean, Big Ten Coach of the Year, it really is a different guy every year. Lots of times it is like one of those, up and coming guys who just comes in and overperforms expectations. So with that being like kind of the way that the award's determined, I'd say that Ryan Walters definitely has a chance to kind of capture that award. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of winning, which I'm not sure what even the expectations are with Purdue this year. It's really like a toss-up. But I wouldn't put it past him to potentially put that program at 7 or 8 wins and take that award home.
Love it. Now, Spartan Dog, as somebody who has a coach who greatly overperformed expectations, had a Heisman finalist just a couple of seasons ago with Mel Tucker. Do you see anything like kind of the magic that Mel Tucker had a couple seasons ago happening with Ryan Walters this year?
I don't. He was an out of the box hire. Mm-hmm. I think everyone who follows Big Ten football and follows Purdue kind of knew that they were borrowing Jeff Brom from Louisville. They weren't, they were never going to keep him from taking that job. So I think they're kind of in a weird place, right? They lost their quarterback. They lost their leading wide receiver, and they're in a division where, yeah, they won it last year by basically default, but you have Luke Fickell now in Wisconsin. Iowa's going to get better. Minnesota is probably going to be pretty solid. Nebraska, there's a ton of question marks, and you're just kind of looking at how everything stacks up, and it just kind of it's against Purdue's grain for them to be able to be successful.
Yeah, so I think that'll help us a little bit know where Spartan Dog stands with the predictions. Before we get into that, though, Brant, you want to go ahead and let people know where they can find the Boiler Express podcast?
Yeah, so these guys record their pod. They go live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. You can find them either through bigbantersports.com. Just pop on over to their page. You can find them on Twitter. You can find them on YouTube. Really, honestly, wherever you get your podcasts, they're there. Unfortunately, they're not able to hop on for the show today, so I'll be hopping in and covering for them. But we can dive right into it.
Sure. Let us know what the prediction is and some of the thoughts behind it.
So, yeah, Boiler Express, as a podcast as a whole, they took Purdue to go 8-4 this season. Their reasoning behind that was that they know they have a lot of turnover. They know this is kind of maybe a hot take. But their thoughts were there's turnover all over the place in college football. Especially in the Big Ten West, Purdue is a big question mark, but you can't really say that all the rest of the teams aren't a big question mark. So this is the best case scenario where they're able to come out 8-4 and maybe sneak back in to Indy like they did a season ago. And also, they wanted to make the point that Hudson Card at quarterback is bringing a lot more experience and talent than maybe some of the other transfers coming in, given that he's coming from a high major program. He played in some big games last year, like that Alabama game. So they're pretty high on Hudson Card, and I kind of have to agree with him. I think he's a good quarterback, and I think he kind of offers the chance for Purdue to maybe outperform expectations.
All right, what say you, Spartan Dog?
I had Purdue going 3-9. You look at their schedule. They don't exactly have the classic Michigan cupcake non-conference. They welcome in Fresno State, and Fresno State's probably has been one of the upper echelon G5 teams here in the last 5 years. They travel to Blacksburg to play Virginia Tech, which is not an easy feat, even when Virginia Tech's kind of down, although I think they're kind of on the come up here. And then they welcome in a Syracuse team that has kind of been up and down throughout Dino Barber's tenure. But I think the water's kind of found its level up there. And, that's no walk in the park. And then you get into the conference schedule. You have to play your division. You have to play an Ascendant Wisconsin program, an Ascendant Illinois program, an Iowa program that has one of, if not the best defense in the country, and added a championship quarterback in Cade McNamara. You play Ohio State. You have to go to Michigan. You have to play Minnesota. It's just it doesn't stack up in Purdue's favor this season. I think there's too much going against them. Yes, Hudson Card is P5 experience, but if he was the reason I think they lost Texas lost that Alabama game last season, and I just don't see where the road is for Purdue to go to be bowl eligible or to even go eight, let alone 8-4.
Wow. Yeah. So tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying here one out of conference win, a win against probably Northwestern and maybe IU. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I just don't see them. Ohio State has to go to Purdue, which, when high-ranked teams go to Purdue, weird stuff happens. Brant and I can both attest to that.
Yeah, I know all too well.
Purdue's given Ohio State some trouble in the past, so you never know with those there. But you've got them 8-4. You said, Brant. So obviously there's 5 games in there that you think maybe could go the other way. That Spartan Dog doesn't think so. Give me 1 or 2 in there, and give us the argument for why they're going to win that one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, so I personally have them 6-6. The Boiler Express podcast was the ones who had an 8-4.
Gotcha.
But their thinking was they could have, most of those Big Ten West games, especially at home, are coin flips. I think they had them taking most of the home games, losing a few on the road, maybe taking one on the road, but kind of just running the table in the Big Ten West, which, I mean, it's a possibility. You don't really know what a lot of those teams are this year. But again, Purdue probably is a tier below teams like Iowa, Minnesota. We know a little bit more about those teams.
Yeah, you'd have to have some magic from Devin Mockabee and Hudson Card and all those who were going on there. So, all right, Spartan Dog, any final thoughts on Purdue for us real fast?
No, I will just say that their record this year I don't think is an indictment of Ryan Walters. I just think they sustained some heavy losses via graduation, and I think eventually he'll kind of get them back to kind of middle in the pack in the Big Ten. Whatever happens to the Big Ten after this. But yeah, I think they're up against it this season, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they definitely have a good future with Ryan Walters. But if what you're saying is correct, they are going to have a hard time losing Jeff Brom and going through that whole situation. Any final thoughts, Brant?
I think we about covered it. I mean, I'd be surprised to see Purdue go 8-4, but you never know.
Yep. Hey, it'll be fun. A lot of banter if that happens. So we're looking forward to it. So, all right, we're going to have Brant head out of here then, and we are going to bring in Alec and Sully to talk through some Penn State predictions. And I think this one could get a little heated because we got a few different ways. Nobody thinks Penn State's going to be bad, but when you're at the level that Penn State is going into the season with predictions, you can see some different stuff. But my question to start is, does Chop Robinson have a chance to win Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten over the likes of JT Tuimoloau, Johnny Newton, Tommy Eichenberg, some of those big names? Go ahead and start us off, Alec.
Yeah, so, the big thing with him, I think that we were going for when we put him in as our prediction was it's also his second year at Penn State because he transferred over from Maryland, and he didn't get here, I think, until the end of April, early May. So it was kind of, a new thing for him, just really had fall camp that year, didn't do much else with the program in 2022. So now he had a full year with the, strength and conditioning, the winter workouts, spring camp, all that. Manny Diaz comes back. And another thing we're kind of banking on there, I think, is Adisa Isaac is healthy on the other side. Denai Dennis Sutton, the freshman last year, supposed to be another good defensive end. And with the two linebackers in Curtis Jacobs and Abdul Carter, there's a lot for offensive lines to account for now with this defense. So Robinson has a chance to get over 10 sacks. We feel like, I think he was at 5.5 last year, but he was first or second in the entire country in pressures. He's kind of opening up for the other guys. I think now it might be the reverse because of what a big name Abdul Carter became by the end of the season. Defense or offenses might be more worried about him and Curtis Jacobs at linebacker than Robinson.
I like it. What do you think, T. Sully?
For us here at the Sully Scoop, we think Penn State is obviously a great team. They're on definitely the top tier, but we just think there's a second top tier, and they don't really match with Michigan or Ohio State. So we predicted Penn State to go 9-3, which is a great season, but we just figured it was more likely they'd drop to a game, say like Michigan State or Illinois, rather than top Michigan or Ohio State this season.
You're shaking your head over there, Spartan Dog. What are you thinking? I see
that Michigan State Penn State game's in a dome. And look, Alec, if you see an NBC executive anywhere anytime soon, you owe them a fat kiss.
Oh, I know.
You owe them a big slobbery smooch.
Yep.
I don't know. When I look at Penn State, I look at a team who finally has enough pieces, I think, to compete with Ohio State and Michigan. I have them going 12-0. I have them going undefeated. I have them going to the college football playoff, and I have Drew Allard winning the Heisman Trophy this year. I'm nothing if not a that boy nice watcher. And Drew Allard, that boy is nice. So I think having a defending champion kind of be in that mix, I think a defending winner, and Caleb Williams kind of still being in the mix, I think that helps Drew Allard's case, because I do think the voting committee takes into account the fact that there's only been one repeat winner in the entire history of the award. And do they really think that whatever Caleb Williams is going to do against lesser competition in the final year of the Pac-12 is going to be enough to upsert, years of tradition of Archie Griffin standing alone as the only repeat winner? I don't think so. I think they're going to give it to a guy who led, a nationally recognized program back to dominance and back into the college football playoff. So.
Wow. So this has not happened yet on the show, but Alec, you are the Penn State fan. Tell the Michigan State fan why he's wrong about thinking so highly of your Nittany Lions.
Well, I don't want to say he's wrong, but our thought process was it's incredibly hard to beat both Ohio State and Michigan. Penn State actually hasn't done it since 2008. And, even though this is pretty talented Penn State team, Michigan and Ohio State are also at an incredibly high level right now. I mean, the one thing going for them is that Michigan's home the Michigan game for Penn State is at home. Michigan has kind of struggled at Beaver Stadium, even when they were the way more talented team. 2015, 21. Those are two instances where the game was probably a lot closer than it should have been. So I think Penn State has a chance there. And Ohio State, I mean, really talented, but Penn State has kind of the defense that matches up with Ohio State when they're strong at edge rusher, they're strong at cornerback. So if you want to stop Ohio State's crazy pass game, that's kind of the two areas you need to be good at on defense. So I mean, yeah, we thought about 12-0, but it feels so hard to beat both of them in the same season. It is a very hard thing to do because they are two of the top 3 teams in the country probably this year. So that was kind of our thought process. It's a little difficult to get over the both of them. But on the Aller Heisman thing, we think he has the talent to do it. The one thing is he has 2 really good running backs that we think might take away some of the accolades from him and all that, where if they both do what they did last year and they're both over 1,000 scrimmage yards and 10 plus touchdowns, I don't know how much people are going to give a ton of credit to the quarterback, because I don't know how much there is to go around, how much scoring, how many stats, but I think he has the talent to do it. I just think with the running backs he has, it's going to be hard for him to win the Heisman.
Man, I feel like I'm the only one that's looking at this schedule right now and saying, yes, Ohio State, yes, Michigan, some of those things. T-Sol, you may have said it earlier. I don't remember, but that Iowa game, week 4, kind of worries me. Kind of makes me think, man, you could have a really strong defense going up against a young Drew Aller. I know he played a little bit last year, but a young Drew Aller who is certainly capable of winning the Heisman, we think, with his talent and everything. But T-Sol, since you're kind of the lowest on Penn State, can you tell us a little bit about that Iowa-Penn State game, and if Penn State fans should be a little worried?
No. That's my answer for that one. You guys should be able to handle Iowa. They've got one of the worst offenses in college football, and the chance of their defense coming out this season and being the best in the Big Ten again, we think is fairly unlikely. We think they're going to have a great defense, but is it going to be the best in the Big Ten a second season in a row? I don't think so. I think that Michigan State game at the end of the year, if you guys lose to Ohio State and Michigan this year, that one might be a trap game just because the team's not competing for a Big Ten title. So what are they playing for at that point? But if you guys knock off Ohio State or Michigan or both, then you're talking something else there.
Yeah, I definitely see your reasoning with the Michigan State game. I would say, I think the majority of the Penn State fan base is more concerned with the Illinois game. Just because of how strong they are on the D-line. Aller's first conference start on the road. I think it's an 11 a.m. kick local time. So Penn State's kind of struggled with 11 a.m. kicks. And with how strong that defensive line is, they can't rely on the running backs as much. Aller kind of has to go win the game. So that's the game I think a little more concerned than Iowa. Iowa being the whiteout. And JR, we were talking about this the other day. They just lost one of their defensive tackles. So I think you could run on them a little more, especially with their top 2 linebackers from last year gone. So I think Illinois is honestly number 3 behind Ohio State and Michigan in terms of concern amongst most of the fans.
I'm with there. Oh, sorry. My personal pick to win the West this year is Illinois. So I'm with you there. I think Illinois is going to be a tough team to knock out.
And there's an elephant in the room that, I don't think either of us have touched yet. It's, is this, do you guys feel, based on how Penn State ended the year last year with winning the Rose Bowl, do you feel that James Franklin has beaten the Frames-Janklin allegations, or do you think there's still more mountain to climb on that?
I think he's gotten past the point where I don't know if he's going to lose the dumb game as much anymore. I know that was kind of a yearly occurrence for a while. I think the way they ended last year kind of showed me that they're past that point, maybe. I think getting blown out by Michigan, honestly, they grew up a lot. I know they lost to Ohio State by 13. That game was a lot closer, I think, than 13 for the majority of it. They got thrashed by Michigan in the run game. And then the rest of the season, they came back, only allowed 2.6 yards per carry, 90 yards a game. So I think they figured something out after they got embarrassed. And, if the third string right tackle wasn't going up against JTT, maybe people look at it in a little different light at the end of the season. So I think they did kind of grow up a little bit, and it's just kind of getting after Ohio State and Michigan now. I think they've done a pretty good job of separating themselves from the rest of the pack.
All right, T-Soul, your thoughts on James Franklin real quick?
I think James Franklin's done a great job at Penn State. He's kept them pretty level as, far as recruiting at the elite tier. And, they don't really drop bad losses during the season. So that's something to respect out of a coach. So I think he's doing his thing, and eventually it will be his time at Penn State to, run the Big Ten.
All right. Hey, Alec, let us know where we can find the Booze, Bets, and Ball podcast real fast, and then we'll head on over to Rutgers.
Yeah, on Twitter, 3B Pod PSU, and you could just type in Booze, Bets, and Ball on most podcast platforms. It'll come up. If you're looking for us on YouTube, that is under Whitaker Media, because I do other stuff on there. So that's where you can find it on YouTube.
Love it. All right, we're going to say goodbye to these three here. Thanks for coming in, and we are going to say hello to our Rutgers team. We have Ashley coming back with Alec, and they are going to talk through a little bit of Rutgers ball coming in, and Adam, I apologize. Adam's going to be coming in as well. Adam, can you tell us where we can find the What's Choppin' podcast? Or no, not Adam. I'm sorry. Alec. Alec, can you tell us? I apologize. Alec, Can you tell us where we can find the What's Choppin' podcast?
Yeah, so we're on Twitter and Instagram at What's Choppin' Pod, and then What's Choppin' Podcast on YouTube and pretty much every other podcast platform. So yeah, that's where you can find us.
Excellent. Can you give us your prediction for the season, Alec?
Yeah, so I got Rutgers going 6-6 on the year and making that bowl game that so many fans have been clamoring for ever since Greg Schiano returned. And especially this year, it feels like there's a little bit more heat than usual. I think they get to that 6-win mark.
All right, very cool. Adam, you and Ashley have them at what? I think it says 3-9. Can you give us a little bit of your reasoning there, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the thing for me about Rutgers this year, just some big stats to just put out there. They're returning 73% of their production, and that wasn't a very productive production from last year. So that's the number one thing that scares me. Number two thing that scares me is the quarterback situation. I mean, you have Gavin Wimsatt in there, who, if you look at last year's stats in 8 games, threw for about 750 yards, but more importantly, the 5 touchdown, 7 interception ratio is super concerning. So without, some of that elite production, and without really a quarterback that has shown that he can be successful at the big level, I don't love Rutgers' schedule. I'll let Ashley kind of talk about the Rutgers Northwestern game at the beginning of the season, but you're looking down this Big Ten schedule, especially at the second half of the season, and Indiana is the only really lock of a win I see, and lock might be a stretch. I don't like Rutgers matching up against teams like Wisconsin and Penn State or Iowa. And Maryland, I think, is going to be really tough this year. And they also play Ohio State. So I think it's going to be a tough second half of the season. And I don't love the pieces on this Rutgers team right now.
All right, Ashley, can you talk a little bit about that Northwestern and Rutgers matchup to start the year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think looking at Rutgers' schedule, I agree with Adam. The second half is definitely going to be tough. And I know Northwestern is definitely in a little bit of a rough position right now, and they had kind of an off season with a lot of turmoil. But I think Northwestern's a team that doesn't really have expectations set in place for it right now, because it's just it's just a little bit in shambles. And if you don't have expectations for a team, you might as well be optimistic about it. And I think Northwestern's got some good transfers coming in. I think we have enough, or I think we're going to have enough players on the team that can really drive a win against Rutgers. Like, I think that's going to be our first big win. I think we're going to win the first game of the season. I think it's going to be really good momentum for us. I have faith in David Braun. I have faith in our new coaching staff, because we're kind of starting anew. We're kind of starting fresh. So I think after this offseason, I think leaders are going to step up. I think our quarterback, or our new transfer quarterback, Ben Bryant, I have a lot of faith in him. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I'm being a little too optimistic, but I do have a lot of hope. And then as far as Rutgers' schedule goes, I mean, looking a little bit more at the non-conference schedule, they're playing teams like Virginia Tech. They're playing teams like they're playing Virginia Tech. They're playing Temple. I think those are both games that they could lose. Unlike Northwestern's non-conference schedule, which is a little bit easier, thankfully, for us this year, I think they have a pretty hard non-conference schedule. So that's another reason why we put them at 3-9. And looking at the statistics in the Big Ten, they've only had 14 wins since joining, and 3 seasons they've gone completely winless against Big Ten teams. So I think those stats, looking at those, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Rutgers team going forward.
Well, Alec, you have 3 more wins for them, so go ahead and let the Northwestern fans and the rest of us know why they're wrong and why 6 wins are coming to the Scarlet Knights this season.
Yeah, now, kind of based on some of the Rutgers fan base, it seems like 6 wins is a little bit optimistic, but I do think there's a path to it. You guys say that Northwestern's going to take that opening game. Obviously, I'm going to go with Rutgers taking that opening game over Northwestern. I think, with the newcomers on offense, I think they're going to do just enough, and the defense, I think is going to take a step forward. Especially, that defensive line is definitely, I would say, one of the better units in the conference. And like you said, Gavin Wimsatt didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence with his play last year, but there was definitely a lot around him that went wrong as well. Offensive coordinator Sean Gleason was fired midway through the season, and they had an interim who, is no longer on the staff. So I guess that can tell you as much. But I think there's definitely more winnable games. Like I said, Northwestern, I think they beat Temple this year more convincingly than they did last year. Last year it was not a pretty performance. They only won by, I think it was like 17-14 or something like that. And then I do think that Rutgers has the advantage over Virginia Tech. They're in kind of a rebuild after, Justin Fuente kind of struggled there down the stretch in his tenure. I think Rutgers wins that game. It's a home game, 3:30 kickoff. There's going to be a lot of momentum, especially if they beat Temple. Michigan going to the Big House, they're not going to be Michigan, but they have made it close the last 3 years now. They had that triple overtime thriller in the COVID season 2021. They went up to the Big House and actually almost pulled it out. They led at halftime last year, and ultimately things fell apart in the third quarter. But yeah, they're not going to win that game. I also agree that Wisconsin's probably going to win pretty handily. You do say that Indiana is one of the locks, you said. I agree with that. I think they'll beat Indiana pretty handily again. I see Michigan State as another winnable game as well. They looked really good last year against Michigan State. It was the defense that ended up letting the team down, which did not happen very often last season. And, you add in Wagner, who, if they beat Wagner by less than 45, it's considered a disappointment. I think that's a good path to 6 wins. And I think Gavin Wimsatt's going to be improved. He has the new offensive coordinator, Kirk Chiraka, who they got from Minnesota. And he's going to simplify the offense and cater it to his strengths. And it's also going to be a lot of running the football. And I think Rutgers has a really deep running back room. So they're going to rely on running the ball and making Gavin Wimsatt make the easy plays. And that's something that we saw a lot of RPO ball, like we saw from Minnesota the last few years. So I definitely think there's a path with a lot of what we call, Shiano's expertise, defense and running the football. I think there's a path to 6 wins for Rutgers here, and I think they make it.
For sure. I think that sounds like some good old school Big Ten ball there with run the ball, strong defense. Let's go. I think Max Melton and Aaron Lewis are 2 stars on the defense as well that can really, really turn a lot of heads this year. So, all right. Well, hey, Alec, thanks for coming in. We're going to move on to our Northwestern predictions. So we're going to keep Ashley and Adam here with us, and we're going to bring in Jason Robinson from Victor's Nation, the Michigan podcast, which I'm sure they are just loving the offseason right now. But we're going to talk more Northwestern than we will Michigan right now. So, Ashley, go ahead and let us know where we can find the Wild Chat podcast.
Yeah, of course. So the Wild Chat podcast is a podcast about Northwestern sports by Northwestern students. We are mostly on Twitter at the Wild Chat. We just released our first episode, so you can find the link to that in our Twitter page. And it's on YouTube at the Wild Chat, or the channel is the Wild Chat Podcast. All of our info is also up on the Big Banter website, bigbantersports.com. So if you're looking for information, you can find it all there as well.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. So we'll let Adam start with the prediction for the season for the Wildcats. Adam, how many wins and losses do you see the Wildcats having this season?
So we have the Northwestern Wildcats at 4 wins, 8 losses. It might be a little bit high for most people, but I really think that Northwestern's going to fall somewhere between 1 win and somewhere between 4 wins. And it's going to be somewhere in between that. So let's take the high end and let's go with it. I think week 1 against Rutgers, that has to be a win. I think that's definitely a winnable game on the schedule. And I think with that momentum, they go into week 2 playing UTEP, and I think they win that game. The non-conference schedule is where I think Northwestern's going to get some wins, because it's going to be where they're going to have to get some wins, especially against Big Ten competition, where I think that they're going to struggle against. I don't think Duke is a win in week 3. But you look later in the schedule, and there's a game against Howard, FCS school. Northwestern did lose to SIU last year, so at this point, anything is possible. But I think that they get the job done against Howard, so that's 3 wins there. And late in the year in the Big Ten, games get cold. You have to win with good defense, and you have to win with running the football, and that's just kind of what the Big Ten comes down to year after year. And I think that Northwestern can steal a win away from someone they probably shouldn't. They play Nebraska late in the year. They play Purdue late in the year. They play Illinois late in the year. Those are games where potentially they can get a win and beat someone they probably shouldn't. Realistically, personally, I probably have Northwestern closer to 3 wins. But you know what? Let's make the argument. I think that they steal a win from someone they shouldn't. They get to 4 wins.
All right, Jason, are you at the 3 to 4 win mark for the Wildcats, or where are you at?
I am at 2 to 10. So for a record 2-10 this year. And the reason I picked that, like Adam was saying as well, like I still think this is a team for Northwestern that could, always come out of nowhere and surprise the Big Ten in some games. So maybe it's going to be more than two wins this year, but I do have them at 2-10. I think just with everything going on involving the allegations of a hazing within the program, and Pat Fitzgerald's firing, I think it's going to negatively impact their program a little bit and culture this specific season. But we'll see. Like Adam was saying, I still think this is a team that maybe could get more wins, and maybe they do get past the hump of 4 wins even as well too. Going to be rooting for AJ Henning, though, transfer from Michigan. That's a Wildcat now, so we'll be cheering for him.
For sure. Ashley, you think 2 wins is more likely, or you think the 3 and 4 wins are more likely?
I'm definitely in the more optimistic 3-4 win camp. I think that last year we came off of a season where we lost a lot of games that we, in theory, should have won, and that wasn't super good. And then the offseason happened, allegations, huge coaching staff turnover. I mean, that really wasn't what we needed going into this season, but it happened. We have to work with it. We have new coaching staff. We have new transfers. We have new players coming in. We have players stepping up, leading the team that were on the team last year still. I think there's enough turnover that something crazy could happen, and those wins could come out of nowhere. I wouldn't say my expectations are super high considering everything that's happened, but I agree with Adam. I think we could pull off that win against Rutgers. I think we could pull off that win against UTEP. I think maybe a win against Purdue or Nebraska later in the season. Like, I think we could pull out those wins. We would have to perform really well. We would have to defy expectations a little bit, but considering that, it's hard to have expectations for this team, you might as well be a little bit optimistic about it. And I do see those wins coming. I think our transfer quarterback, I have a lot of faith in what he might be able to produce. I mean, AJ Henning, one of the best transfers that we have. I mean, he looked amazing. I think he could do really well for our team as well. I think there's a lot of potential, and I don't think we'll really know how it plays out until the season starts, until we get on the field, until we see David Braun calling those defensive plays, being the new head coach, how Ben Bryant throws. We're not going to know until the season starts. So I think it's hard to predict now, but I do have I am optimistic. I do think we can pull out those wins, but more of a wait and see game as the season starts. We'll see how well that actually plays out, but crossing my fingers.
For sure. It's going to be very interesting watching Northwestern. Oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead real fast.
No, you're good. I was just trying to sneak something in at the end of there. But I think the most interesting thing is, like, there are no expectations for this team, right? The kind of the narrative right now is, right, allegations, fired the head coach, You've lost, probably the 4 best players on the team last year, right? Evan Hull, Peter Skoronski, Cam Mitchell, and Adibare, right? Those were the 4 most productive players on the team last year. They're all gone to the NFL. So this is a clean slate. This is a team that's kind of has their backs against the wall. A team that, interim head coach, new transfers. You mentioned AJ Henning earlier. I also really like Cam Johnson, Arizona State transfer at wide receiver a lot. And then obviously Ben Bryant too on offense. But this is a team that's kind of has their backs against the wall, right? There's no expectations. And at the end of the day, it's how well do they click together, right? Do they kind of respond to these allegations, respond to everything that's gone on in the locker room and over the course of the offseason and kind of, beat it and be like, this is what Northwestern football is about? Or do they let, those allegations and everything that's gone on define this team? So I think that's really what comes down to, do they win 1 game or 4 games? It's how well do they band together in the locker room. And I think a situation like this allows for a team to get really close together and be like, let's fight it. And let's show the national media what we've got.
For sure. And some of that persistence is what we just love about college sports so much, as student athletes really just fighting through some of those things and persevering. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, hey, we're going to move on from Northwestern here. Thanks so much, Adam and Ashley, for coming in. Jason's going to stick with us, and we are going to bring in a Michigan State Spartan dog back in here again. All right. I feel like there's going to be a lot of shots fired here with Michigan and Michigan State together, but I'm here for it. Go ahead and plug the Victors Nations for us real fast, Jason.
So we have you can find us on Facebook, just under 14,000 members right now. You can find us on Twitter as well. We have our own YouTube channel at the Victors Nation Podcast. And then soon to come, we're going to be going to Apple Pods and Spotify as well too. But that's where you can find us, majority on Facebook. And we also have our own website, thevictorsnation.com, where we share articles from Blue by 90, Maize and Brew, and Wolverines and the Wolverines Wire as well. So you can also find us there with the community forum.
For sure. A lot of good content out there. We appreciate you being part of Big Ten Banter to help with that as well. Jason, go ahead and let us know, what's the prediction this season for the Michigan fans? What are you guys thinking?
Man, undefeated season. So we have a championship or bust mentality this year more than ever. I know we've had it years prior, but this is more than ever with this mentality and this culture of this team. We have a lot of returning stars. I like what we did in the transfer portal as well too, getting AJ Barner, Drake Nugent, Ladarius Henderson, Stewart, and Heisman. I'm predicting a three-peat. Just to swing over to offensive line, I'm thinking a three-peat for Joe Moore Award regarding our deep semi-pro offensive line, which is 10 deep. I think we got 10 deep guys on that front. And behind that, we have Corum, we have Edwards. I mean, Big Ten proved that you can stop the running game, right? I mean, we've been solid at that the last few years with them too. And we're looking to pass a lot more of this too. I know we haven't seen it in recent years, but I expect JJ to also utilize his legs a lot more too. He's our full off-season starter, which we've been excited about all year, and the progression that he's made. And he's also got some solid targets at wide receiver. So he's got Cornelius Johnson coming back, Roman Wilson. Also to watch out for that they're not being talked about enough, I think, outside of Michigan, is Clemens and Tyler Morris as well. And we also have a solid sophomore tight end in Colston Loveland. But JJ, Corum, Edwards, 3 early Heisman candidates. That's just the offense. Our defensive front, which everything coming out of camp right now, they're the real deal. They've been very competitive with our offensive line. Chris Jenkins is coming back, who led that defensive line in tackles. We have a very, very deep linebacker room as well, too, including Junior Colson. We also got Mike Sanistrell coming back, and Will Johnson, who I thought played absolutely spectacular during his freshman tour. And we're going to have some other guys step up in that secondary as well, too. So, we can get into the Jim Harbaugh suspension as well, too, but I think that's going to light a fire under us. I know players aren't happy about that. The coaching staff, we have the recipe to develop. We have the culture now. And we have a lot of key and elite players on both sides of the ball to make a run this season.
All right, Spartan Dog, I can see the fire brewing inside of you too. You had to listen to all of that. What do you think the prediction is more likely for with Michigan this season?
I know I sent in a different prediction to Brant. I've revised it in the last couple of days. I had Michigan going 10-2. Look, here's what I have to say about the Harbaugh suspension, right? Okay, the NCAA clearly wants to hammer him. Okay, they didn't want the 4 games. They're going for blood, right? So this self-imposed 3-game. JR, what's the language rating on this here? I forgot to ask last
time. You just be you, Spartan Dog.
All right. Frankly, I think the 3-game self-imposed suspension is bullshit. I don't know how it's going to help. How it's going to help the NCAA go any less on Harbaugh at the start of next season, unless Harbaugh plans on not being there next season, and they can go, look, we punished him. Don't punish the program, which could be likely. I don't know. But I'm a big believer in the Tom Izzoism, fat and sassy. Michigan's had a lot to prove the last couple of years. They had to prove they could beat Ohio State, had to prove they could win the Big Ten. They proved it. Now they're coming in, and from the outside looking in, there's a lot of our shit don't stink from the top down. And, I don't see them beating Ohio State 3 years in a row. I'm really high on Penn State this season. You have to go to State College. That's going to be a whiteout. It's going to be at night. It's, I don't see the path to a three-peat. I don't. I think the competition at the top is the best it's ever been. It's a 3-horse race instead of a 2-horse race. Someone's getting sent to the glue factory.
All right. Real fast, Jason, you have anything to let us know before we end the Michigan predictions here?
So that Penn State game, that's not a night game. That's 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So that ain't going to be a night game. They can do all the whiteout that they want. We've already beat them there before during the day, and we're going to do it again. Again,
go ahead.
I don't see Ohio State matching up with us they don't even know who their quarterback is, and they got to come into Ann Arbor again too and prove that they can stop that running game. And we're going to be passing the ball a lot more this year too. There is really, and I agree, like Penn State, that's definitely a game. And we also have, in our last pod, we also have a bunch of trap games in between that too. So we got Michigan State, then we got Purdue, and then we got Penn State, then we got Maryland, then we got Ohio State right after that. So there is 2 trap games in between the last 5 games of the season that are going to be very, very competitive. So anything could happen. So I agree. Like something crazy could happen. I don't think we're losing to Penn State though. And I don't think we're definitely are not losing to Ohio State this year coming to the Big House. They have no idea who their quarterback is right now. They're going to have to face all that pressure, and we're going to let them have it. I just don't see it happening.
Just because they don't know now doesn't mean they won't know in November. I just don't, again,
anything could happen. I agree. I know we're beating Michigan State this year. I don't think you guys are going to be burning any coaches.
You probably are. You probably are. You probably are. I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah.
Peace on earth, and we have a Michigan and Michigan State fan.
It's a rivalry here.
What do you say again, Jason?
It's a rivalry game. Crazier things have happened, and games have been close sometimes, too, between Michigan and Michigan State. So we'll see.
We will see. It's always a rivalry. You never know what can happen. Yeah. That's why we love college football. That's why we love our rivalries. So, hey, Jason, thanks so much for coming on, man. Yep. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. We are going to have Jason exit. Spartan Dog's going to stick with us as we get into the Michigan State predictions. And Connor Berry from the Iowa podcast. I think Inside the Nest is what it's called, but we'll get to more of that here soon. Go ahead and plug your podcast for us for Michigan State, Spartan Dog.
Yeah, first things first, Connor, the flow's insane. I love everything about it. Love the general vibe you're giving off. We're going to have fun on this segment. You can find Bacon Wire and MSU Sports Podcast on Twitter at Bacon Wire. We're on all available podcast platforms, Bacon Wire and MSU Sports Podcast. You can find me at Spartan Dog 97. My co-hosts, Lucas and Carter. We podcast now that we're in season every week now. We'll be posted every Monday. And Yeah, we cover both MSU football and basketball. Going to be a fun basketball season. Football, I don't think it's going to be that fun. So.
Well, go ahead and get into your prediction. Maybe it won't be as fun, but be optimistic for us here, Spartan Dog. Where do you see Michigan State going this season?
I have MSU going 7-5 this year. My motto for this year, my personal motto for the team this year is find the level, right? Mel Tucker's got to be able to find a suitable basement for this program, because 5-7 is not it with the investments we're putting in. There's a quarterback battle going on right now. I posted a blog on Big Banter about how I want that quarterback battle to shake out. And I am a big believer that 6-6 with Katin Hauser is better than 7-5 with Noah Kim. So if they start Noah Kim and go 7-5, I want coordinator changes. Ultimately, I think this comes down to the team's a bit deeper. I think last year happened mostly because D'Antonio quit recruiting after 2016. He just gave up. Anyone who played college football in Ohio had a PWO from Michigan State. So I just think now that the team's a little deeper, he's starting to fill out the high school recruits. He's not so much relying on the portal, except for, plugging some gaping holes. I think 7-5, I think, is probably where the team's going to shake out. And, I'm looking for competitiveness against the top three teams in the Big Ten East.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Connor, what do you think? You think the Spartans will go bowling this year?
Personally, I don't. I'm not here to hate or cause any issues. I think it's just more or less going to go pretty similar to last year. If correct me if I'm wrong, they went 5-7. I don't think losing your quarterback and losing your top wide receiver is really a good thing ever. I understand the portal helped and screwed a lot of people throughout this process, so it can go either way. But I think that Michigan State, not comparable to Iowa, has a pretty difficult Big Ten schedule. I mean, they got to play teams like Ohio State, Michigan. I even think Minnesota is a tough game. So, that's just where I'm at. I think, 7-5, 5-7. I just think we're probably, we teeter-totter on a couple of those games there. So
that fifth game of the year at Iowa, that's not an easy game either. How do you see that one shaping out there, Connor?
I have to lean toward my bias. I'm here. I think that we're going to win that game. Like he was saying, there's a quarterback battle, and the last thing you want to do is go into Kinnick Stadium against that defense with any type of question marks. And obviously, that's a later week in the year. I'm sure they'll have some stuff figured out, but I just don't see them coming in and shaking anything up on that defense.
Yeah.
No, I mean Kinnick's a nightmare. Kinnick's a nightmare for great teams, for elite teams. Even when Iowa is not as good as I think they will be this year, I have them losing that game too. The time hasn't been announced. I'm scared to death it's going to be a night game. I don't know. I'm very my bio is MSU football's Frank the Tank for a reason. I am just very, very pessimistic and black-pilled about MSU this year. I know that's not kind of what everyone's kind of looking for out of the Michigan State representative, but I'm just so this past season and this offseason have just burnt me out to my core. And I spend all my free time watching Cohen Carr dunk and watching Carson Cooper flex his new biceps. I mean, I'm looking up flights to Phoenix. Whatever happens this season happens, but I'll be in Phoenix in April. That's all that's kind of where I'm at.
Mel Tucker on the hot seat there, Spartan Dog?
Well, here's the thing. If he doesn't make a bowl game this year and doesn't make any changes, yeah, he's on the hot seat. But, Connor brought up 5-7 and he sees it going a similar way. Look, 5-7 happened because of a rash of injuries, especially on the defense. I mean, we had walk-ons playing at one point, and we had a rotation. We only had 3 defensive tackles available. So, that there was just a perfect storm of D'Antonio not leaving any depth behind. Tucker not being able to fill enough gaps with his first recruiting class due to COVID restrictions, and it just kind of shook out that way. I think 7-5 is probably the program's basement going forward. But I do think there needs to be investment from not only Tucker and, showing that he's committed to kind of making 11-2 more common than 5-7, but there also needs to be commitment from Michigan State's boosters. He was talking with one of our beat writers, and he's right. Michigan State has a great NIL program for using as intended. The problem is they don't have a good NIL program using it in practice, how it's actually used. And there's a lot of not the billionaires, but the ambulance chasers, the doctors, right? Those guys who were scared off last season. Scared money don't fucking make money. So, these guys need to step up. They need to give it. They need to give to this collective, and they need to build the war chest to go out and get these recruits. So, fans aren't sitting there watch David Stone putting on an Oklahoma hat.
Yep, that would be quite infuriating. I heard those comments as well, and it's never good to hear about the NIL that's going on in your school if it's not going well. Fun to hear about if it's going really well, but not fun to hear about if it's not going well. So let's move on over to our Iowa predictions. We're going to keep Spartan Dog and Connor here with us, and we're going to bring on our rep from the Ski U podcast who talks about all things Minnesota there. Spencer, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good to see you, fellas.
All right, thanks for coming in. Let's start with Connor plugging the Inside the Nest podcast. Connor, where can we find the Inside the Nest podcast?
Yeah, so right now we are on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, we are Inside the Nest 0. Somehow Inside the Nest was already taken. Couldn't find who even, by the way, but it was taken. On Instagram, it's Inside the Nest Pod. And we are only currently on YouTube and Spotify. We're working towards the rest of that, so it's all Inside the Nest there as well.
Love it. All right, Connor, start us off. What is your prediction for Iowa football this season?
Hey, man, I think, we've been dealing with a lot this offseason. A lot of people have been saying a lot of negative things, as they rightfully should. Our offense was just unbearable to watch last year. And so what do? You got to go make some adjustments. And, we brought in a new athletic director who is still rolling with the idea that we have to hold Brian accountable for 25 points a game. I know that's not even asking for a crazy amount in college football, but here's the deal. He couldn't even muster up 14, and that's sad. So there's a lot of optimism here in the fact that we did go and get the guys we needed as far as the offensive line and quarterback and, skill positions. There wasn't a whole lot of to work with last year to make me believe, this isn't a step up. I think Cade McNamara is a proven quarterback. We bring in another tight end to tight end university, and that's just a recipe for success. You bring in a top recruit from Ohio State as well on offense, and this is something that we've never seen. So I personally have us with our defense, making a huge run. A lot of people have us underrated, and I totally get why. I'm not here to, change anyone's minds or anything, but this is my belief. I read a lot of the reports, and I'm reading about how our offensive line stepped up. So there's a lot of optimism from my end this year, barring, some injuries. Right now, Cade McNamara is actually technically hurt. He hasn't been practicing at full force. So that doesn't help, but I do believe he'll be back. If not week 1, definitely week 2. So
Big Ten championship bound is what you're saying?
I think there's no doubt. We have easily the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. I think that, by luck there, we just have an easy schedule. There's not much to say. We could lose a lot of those games. I think a lot of them are going to be painfully close, but
yeah,
I think we'll be on the W side of this.
All right. Well, Spencer, I see you shaking your head like you're in agreement there. What's your prediction for Iowa this season?
I totally agree with Connor. I think that they're an 11-1 football team. Like Connor was saying, their schedule is looking pretty good. Anytime you don't have Ohio State and Michigan on the schedule, especially if you're in the West, that's an opportunity to capture a West title. And that's kind of what they have. You look at the rest of their schedule, I think their biggest competition out of the West is Illinois, and they fortunately have that game at home. Minnesota, and we'll talk about Minnesota a little later. We're at Kinnick this year. Haven't won in Kinnick since 1999. I was just a little boy. And haven't in general beaten the Hawkeyes since 2014. And so I can't believe the Gophers will beat them until I see it. And I think outside of that, their hardest game is at Penn State. I heard you all talking about that in the previous segment. Going to Penn State is tough, but in recent years, it seems that Iowa's also had their number. I do think that they may give up that one because it is on the road. But I think that Connor is exactly right. I think the West is theirs to take. They're well coached. They just need competent quarterback play, I think. And I think out of Cade McNamara, defensively, I don't think they get enough credit, truly. And it pains me to say all these glowing things about the Iowa Hawkeyes being that we're arch nemesis, but
I love it.
But yeah, but truly their defense, like last year, what was it? I think like 10 of their games, were like under 13. Their opponents, they held them under 13 points or something like that. It's just incredible what you see, and they're just going to reload at that position or on that side of the ball. So I agree 100% with Connor.
Phil Parker has a good argument for best DC in the conference, that's for sure. Spartan Dog, we're giving a lot of love to Iowa right now. Are you on the same ship, giving love to Iowa?
I have Iowa going 7-5. I don't know how you can repeat last year. There's a lot of storm clouds hanging over the program with this gambling thing that's going on. And listen, anyone who's been in a relationship knows the best thing forward is an ultimatum. So, I just don't know how this points per game thing is can possibly lead to positive results. They have to go 2 aims for El Assico. It's just, I don't see a path for Iowa to get to Indianapolis this season, especially with, other teams in the West kind of being ascendant. I think the days of everyone penciling in Iowa as the West champion, I think, is over. And yeah.
Did those ever start? I missed those days, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just think Iowa's kind of in a tough spot right now. And, I think this is kind of this season might get off the rails a lot quicker than people think.
Well, I'll tell you, I am here for the metaphor of the Iowa AD and Brian Ferentz in this kind of toxic ultimatum relationship where they're giving each other these ultimatums. I'm here for that, so I'm going to start using that this season.
Hey, real man, if we can't get that kind of production, if the worst thing that comes to that is getting rid of Brian Ferentz, then trust me, man, I'm not upset about that, so.
It's funny when you have probably the best DC in the conference on the one side and then probably the worst OC in the conference on the other side.
Unbelievable, man.
Big difference on each side. Well, hey, let's move on to our Minnesota predictions here. We are going to keep everybody around, and we're going to go ahead and hear a plug for the Ski U podcast. Spencer, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Sky U Pod, we're pretty much anywhere that you can see, have podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. We just started with YouTube with our last episode. That's, again, Sky U Pod. We're in the works of making accounts on TikTok, Instagram, and I believe Facebook as well. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, we, during the season, we'll have an episode weekly, usually Tuesdays or Wednesdays we'll air. So we're excited for this upcoming season.
Cool. All right, Sky U, my bad. Sorry, mispronunciation there. Thank you for correcting that.
Potato.
Go ahead and let us know what your prediction is for this season, Spencer, for the Minnesota Gophers.
As our podcast was discussing in our last episode, I think that the Gophers are going to go 9-3, and I think that's the ceiling for these Gophers. Going 8-4, 7-5, that's an understandable record as well, because as you all know, the Gophers have a pretty tough schedule this year. But if you look at, the talent that PJ has assembled, I think that the talent is there. And here in local media interviews that PJ has done here, he seems quietly confident in this team. I frankly believe that he believes that this is the most talented roster that he's assembled during his career here. So that helps a lot. We got some changes at offensive coordinators, and I'm excited for that, because as a team that ground and pounds like 60% of the time, I'm excited to hopefully get the ball in the air this year. We have a lot of athletes, out wide there. We have the return of Ottman Bell, who I feel has been around for the past decade. He's coming back for, I think it's his 6th or 7th season, which is crazy. Daniel Jackson, he's a really great guy. He's a really great player as well. I think that he'll make a lot of noise this year. We've got some transfers, Corey Crooms and Elijah Spencer, who I think will also make a great impact. Sean Tyler, I think he's an electrifying running back on the offensive side of the ball. He's definitely not a Mo Ibrahim type back, but I think that he has more breakout speed than Mo ever had. So I think that he can make some great plays. Defensively, I don't think that there's much to say. I think that Joe Rossi, defensive coordinator, has done a tremendous job over the past couple of years. One of the top defenses, usually in the Big Ten. And I just think that he'll be able to assemble that again. A little worried about D tackle. We're a little thin there, and at the defensive back positions. But I am confident with the vets that are there, they'll be able to make an impact and hopefully get guys that can step up, in the depth chart as well. So I do have us lose. Unfortunately, we're on the other side, unlike the Iowa Hawkeyes. We do have Michigan and Ohio State this year on the slate. Fortunately, we have Michigan at home, but I don't think that makes that much of a difference. And we're at the shoe, so I count those both as losses. Iowa, again, I can't believe a win until I see it. So I have that going to Kinnick as someone who's been there. I think it's the toughest and one of the toughest environments in the country, frankly, to play at in college football. And then, we have UNC on the road, North Carolina, and they're great offensively. Drake May, who they have, is a tremendous quarterback, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. But I feel like their defense isn't really there. They're always going for so many points over there in the ACC. So I think that we'll be able to hopefully stifle them defensively, and hopefully offensively we can make some noise there as well. I think that there's probably like a 40-45 chance at going on the road and winning there. But the Gopher in me just wants that upset. So I'm going to go for the Gophers there. So, and I'll finish with this. If you look around the Big Ten West, other than Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota, you got brand new, fresh faces at head coach. Cultures are changing. Offenses are changing. Defenses are changing. I just think that if you're a tenured coach, if you're Ferentz, Fleck, Belima, you've been here in the Big Ten West, you know what it takes to win. I think that you have to win the games against those new head coaches. And sure, you can probably get a loss here and there, but I think as tenured coaches, you have to win those games. And I think that PJ will do just that. So I got 9-3.
A lot of good analysis there. Thanks, Spencer. Spartan Dog, are you on the same train with Spencer there, thinking Minnesota's have a good season, or are you a little bit more down on them?
I am not. I have Minnesota going 5-7. I hope the Fleck Bank is insured by the NDIC. Just for everyone's sake. Look, I think this is probably the best the Big Ten West has been at the top since maybe they got away from legends and leaders. I think, I'm going to Chapel Hill to play Drake May. I just don't see how that's a recipe for success. Ton of unknowns. Like you said, you have you got the short end of the stick with the crossover, having to play both Michigan and Ohio State. I just don't see how a new quarterback trying to implement a new system, all these things translate to a 9-3 season. Unfortunately for you guys. So that's kind of where I have him at. I have him at 5-7.
Where are you at with him, Connor?
I think I had him at like 6-6, but I think that's more or less due to my ignorance on the team. I didn't watch a lot of those new transfers that they got, and I did hear a lot of positive things about him, especially on the offensive side of the ball. More or less because Iowa came after the same guys and didn't get him, so that's how I know they're guys that are going to be successful. But at the same time, I like we've mentioned, I think, they did get a little bit screwed over by having to play Ohio State, especially on the road. Michigan at home, like you said, that helps a little bit, but that just is never going to be easy. Michigan, I think, is a team that just won't lose a game this year. So I can't remember who else I had them losing to. I think I did have them losing to North Carolina, but that, again, I just don't know how Minnesota's defense is. That's more or less my ignorance. I just know that UNC is such a high-powered offense, and they're hard to keep up with. So I didn't see the same kind of success from Minnesota the last year, at least, but we'll see this year. I know Athame Kalimanakis, correct me if I say his name wrong, I apologize. He's a guy that Iowa went after at quarterback, and we actually came after him for basketball too. So he's just an incredible athlete. So if he can play the part in which he's supposed to, I think that they could surprise a lot of people. But I think more or less you kind of have them in the middle of the road, kind of top tier of the Big Ten West there, competing with Illinois, Iowa, and a little bit Wisconsin. We'll see how their coaching does.
All right, great stuff from everybody here. Thanks so much for coming in, guys. We are going to have Spartan Dog and Spencer head out of here, and we are going to talk some Wisconsin Badgers football. So we're going to keep Connor in, and we're going to bring T-Soul in to talk through some of that. And I know there's a lot of high expectations for Luke Fickell this year, and I think a lot of people are high on him. Are you guys as high on Luke Fickell as everybody else is?
Me personally, I am. I love Luke Fickell hire because I look at it as two things. I think Nebraska grabbed the best coach on the market, and Wisconsin grabbed the best coach who nobody knew was on the market. When you look at all the coaching hires that happened last season. So I'm all for it. He's proven to be a good coach. He won a lot of games for Cincinnati and, ultimately brought them to the playoff, which is incredible. So I think he can do good things at Wisconsin for them.
Connor, are you in the same boat here?
For Wisconsin, man, I mean, listen, I've watched Luke Fickell. I live in Ohio here, so I hear about him from Cincinnati. I've heard about him even with his interim at Ohio State. And, although he didn't do all that well at Ohio State that one year, he completely turned around Cincinnati. He made them a playoff team, so that more or less speaks volumes of what kind of coach he can be. Walking into a team with a little bit more talent, I think, yeah, man, they're a team to look out for. That's for sure.
All right. Well, we were supposed to have one of our Wisconsin representatives here for the Badger Notes After Dark. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be with us. So you get a Nebraska guy and an Iowa guy, which I know they just know the Big Ten West so well. They'll have expertise on Wisconsin. But I think both of you are pretty high on Wisconsin this year. Go ahead and start us off, T-Soul. What's your record prediction for Wisconsin this year?
I believe at the Sully Scoop, we agreed to have Wisconsin go 8-4 this season. We thought that was being pretty favorable for them because, the predictions for the Big Ten West have been all over the board. And I've seen a lot of people saying Wisconsin at worst is going to be a one-loss team. And I just don't see that happening. I don't think that they're just going to, come out of the gates as a one-loss team and run away with the West. I don't think anyone's going to run away with the West. So we just think that they'll be 8-4. They'll be a really solid unit. They'll lose some games that they probably shouldn't. They'll win some games that maybe they shouldn't, and they'll be just one of the top tier teams in the West this season.
Very cool, very cool. And Connor, you along the same lines as T-Soul here. What's your prediction?
I think I had them winning like a 9-10 games this year. Again, I agree that, there's a lot that we don't know with them. There's a lot of changes. They bring in an offensive coordinator that is more or less like a West Coast offense guy to a team that does not fit that narrative whatsoever. There's going to be a little bit of scuffles there, but I mean, when you do have a guy like Braylon Allen, I think that you're going to be destined to win football games. He's a terror. Their defense is always pretty stout. Their offensive line is always solid. I can't speak too much to who their offensive line is going to be this year, but as a standard, I believe in them. I think that they're going to drop a couple games. I think that they don't have an easy schedule. They have to play Ohio State. While there's some question marks with Ohio State, I think there's just more with Wisconsin, and so that's why I just got to give them a couple losses there.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dynamic between the two of having, the really, really strong offensive coordinator and Phil Long, and then you have this strong defensive coordinator, Luke Fickell, who, yes, his defense was really good at Cincinnati, but he was also fantastic at Ohio State there for a while as a defensive coordinator. Like Connor said, the head coaching job didn't work out so well when he filled in for a year. However, he's always been a strong defensive coach, and looking out for that. T-Sol, is he kind of your favorite to possibly be the coach of the year in this conference? They don't typically give it to a Ryan Day or a Jim Harbaugh or a James Franklin, kind of those guys. They kind of give it to some new coaches and some of those who aren't as higher up. Is he kind of your favorite, T-Sol?
I don't know if he would be my favorite, but it wouldn't surprise me if he won Coach of the Year. Now, if he goes out and wins 10 games, like Connor said, yeah, he's my Coach of the Year. I don't care what anyone else does in the conference, because that would be pretty incredible to do, to come into Wisconsin and do. But he's going to have a lot of competition because, I mean, if you look at, say, Illinois, who, if they go out and win the West this season, I would look at Brett Bielema to be Coach of the Year. If Iowa runs away with the West, you look at their coach to be Coach of the Year. If all of a sudden Nebraska's turned around this year. So I just think it's a lot of what if, and that's the kind of game that we're playing with that one.
For sure. A lot of those out in the Big Ten West kind of have that chance. Connor, your thoughts on Big Ten Coach of the Year? If is it out West? Is it more out East? What do you think?
See, just because of the uncertainties out West, like everyone kind of, I think, agrees, new coaches and whatnot. I think that contrary to what you were saying before, I think we'll see a Ryan Day or a Jim Harbaugh or a James Franklin get it. Personally, I think Michigan's going to go undefeated. I think they're the best team, so I think it's hard not to give it to them. I know that Harbaugh's got these suspensions going, and that kind of scuffles it up a little bit too, but if they win, man, it's going to be hard not to give it to them, in my opinion, at least.
I think that would be a Big Ten record. Only have to coach 9 games and you win Big Ten Coach of the Year. So I think
that is a little bit not fair, but shit, yeah. I think it's likely at the same time.
Right. And he's doing some fun things over there, bringing his dad in to be an assistant head coach and letting all his other guys do that. So it should be fun over there to see how that goes. Well, hey, Connor, you've been with us for a few segments. We appreciate it. We'll let you head out and we'll talk some Nebraska football, some of the predictions there. We'll bring Brant in to talk with us about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, I need to get your take on this, T-Sol. All right. I've heard a lot of hype for Jeff Sims. Okay. And there hasn't been a non-QB to win the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year since 2017 with Saquon Barkley. There's not been a non-QB, but can Jeff Sims be that next QB? Because I don't think we've seen one from Nebraska yet, at least recently. Can he be that one from Nebraska to kind of change things? What are your thoughts?
Jeff Sims definitely has potential to do that. I mean, when you look at how skilled he is, he's one of those guys where he can outrun everyone on the defense when he takes off. When you look at like his film at Georgia Tech, and it's not like they were playing a bunch of nobodies, they're playing in the ACC. So there's some pretty good teams out there. And he's got a nice deep ball. His question becomes, how accurate is he with the mid game? How accurate is he playing all day long? Because he's a big guy. He could take hits. I mean, he is way bigger than, our star linebackers. So he's going to be a fun one to watch. And if he has a great season and Nebraska in general has a great season, he very well could be at least in the conversation for Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year.
Wow. What are your thoughts, Brant? You think Jeff Sims has a ceiling like that?
I do not at all. I think he's a talented quarterback. He obviously has a lot more experience than a lot of the quarterbacks in the Big Ten this year, with all of his experience out of Georgia Tech. However, we've seen guys with talent come through Nebraska, like Taylor Martinez, Adrian Martinez, and they're still not even winning 6 games. And if you can't win 6 games, you're not going to be in the conversation for such a prestigious award.
Right. All right. Well, hey, T-Sol, go ahead and give us the plug for the Sully Scoop podcast and then get into your prediction this year for Nebraska.
Yeah, so the Sully Scoop podcast is the Sully brothers, me and 2 of my brothers, and we just talk all things Nebraska football. And if you Google the Sully Scoop, you'll find us on a bunch of things. But we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean. So like anywhere you look for podcasts or listen to them, you'll definitely find us there.
Love it. All right, go ahead and get into your prediction for the season for Nebraska.
I believe the Sully Scoop this year, we agreed to go with 8-4, but since I'm on there with both of my brothers, we're all over the board with our predictions. I think B-Sol picked them to lose 2 games. I picked them, I think, to go 8-4 or 9-3, and J-Sol predicted them to go 6-6. So we're kind of all over the board. We stuck them in the middle. We think that they're going to be a lot more competitive this year because Scott Frost was just a terrible coach and ultimately seemed to get out-coached when it was winning time in the second half and the fourth quarter specifically. So when you look at Nebraska recruiting the last few years, they've recruited towards the top of the West, if not as the best team, and we haven't seen that on the field. So if you come in with a new coach should be able to come in and win 8 games right away in the West, especially looking at their schedule. Like their only really tough game is Michigan. And outside of that, it's just a bunch of question marks in the West is really what it comes down to. It's a lot of coin flip games. And can you finish off these teams that you should be beating?
All right, Brant, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't see Nebraska making a bowl game this year. I think 4-8, 5-7 is way more likely than 6-6 or beyond. I know 8-4, 9-3 is kind of the range you were talking. The West is a lot of question marks and a lot of coin flips, with I guess no team really being like the set in stone front runner. And people talk about Wisconsin, Iowa being like kind of the top tier, but the talent gap between those two and like the next few teams, really on paper, it's more question marks than answers right now for really everybody. But for Nebraska, you guys haven't won 6 games since 2016. You've gone through like a coach and a half since then. Now onto the new era with Matt Rule. For me, I think Matt Rule he's a great college coach. He's proven that at many different levels. I think he's going to be the guy to get Nebraska back to relevance and back into bowl games and beyond. Not winning West titles because that's not a thing anymore, but maybe like competing at the top of the Big Ten. But I don't think it happens this year. There's still too many holes in the roster. But give him a year or two, and I think he can really build Nebraska back into something relevant.
That's my thing with Nebraska this season is that, like T-Sol said, they have recruited pretty well. And in the past, it has taken at least a season for Matt Rule to really get his teams together. But both of those teams, Temple and Baylor, after Baylor was coming off their terrible stuff, I thought to myself, man, there is something here where if Matt Rule can just get the talent and get the culture and with the transfer portal as well, I got to say, I'm a little bit more on T-Sol's side. I could see an 8-4 season. Heck, I think their ceiling is 10-2. I'm not saying that they're going to go 10-2, but last year I thought Purdue was going to win the West just because they didn't play Ohio State and Michigan. And this year I look at Nebraska, they only play Michigan. They don't have Penn State. They don't have Ohio State. And so you look at the way the schedule plays out and everything, it's kind of a good season for them. So Nebraska and Iowa have always kind of been my picks for the Big Ten West. And we'll see that last game of the season. I really feel like that last game of the season with Iowa, that could be the deciding game for the Big Ten West. What do you think about that, T-Sol? Am I too high on the Cornhuskers?
I don't think you're too high, but it's kind of like I think after the first 2 games of the season, we'll kind of know if Nebraska really is competing for the West or if they're just competing to make a bowl game. Because if they come out week 0 or week 1 or whatever early and beat Minnesota, then yeah, they're probably competing for the West. If they play a respectable game with Minnesota and lose, they're probably going to be more in that 5-7 to 7-5 type of range. And, if they lose to Colorado, I mean, we're talking about probably just looking forward to the end of the season and seeing what they bring next year, because Colorado is a team that you really have to wipe the floor with.
Right. Yeah, and that'll be huge if Colorado is somehow able to pull out a win there, and even against TCU, or they just split those 2 games, beating TCU and then losing to Nebraska. That's going to be huge for their season. But they have the star power. Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, they have the star power. So it'll be very, very interesting to see. So, all right, Brant, you got any final thoughts on Nebraska?
Nothing from my end. I mean, they're probably like the number 1 team at the top of my list. That's going to be just fun to watch this year to see how it all comes together, because I think they're probably the biggest question mark, not only in the West, but the entire conference. So definitely excited for the season for the Huskers.
Love it. All right. Well, we are going to talk some Maryland football after this. So Brant is going to head out. T. Sully's going to stay with us, and we are going to bring in our Maryland representative from the Turtleheads Talk. So before we get started, Jordan from Turtlehead Talk. Jordan, tell me, are you excited for Josh Gaddis this year at Maryland?
No.
I didn't mean to start off so negative.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sure he's going to do fine. I'm actually excited about Kevin Smolin being the offensive coordinator. But I will say, I think this is, we'll talk about it later, but this is definitely the biggest step for Maryland football in a while. We've definitely got all the pieces to surprise some people. Let's put it that way.
Right, yeah, just in that loaded Big Ten East there, if you can pull away one of those few wins, you could really, really surprise people. And you almost had it last year against Ohio State, so we will really see what Maryland can do this season. But before we get into that, go ahead and plug your podcast for us, Jordan.
Heads, we've been around for over a year now. In my opinion, we're the best podcast on Big Banter. We're the best podcast in the world. You know what I mean? We talk a little bit of everything. We're main Terps basketball, Terps football, Terps lacrosse, soccer, field hockey, whatever you want to talk about. We also talk NFL, MLB, Orioles, Ravens. We're here in Maryland. So we're a great listen, good time, get a couple good laughs. We're about an hour-long show. Check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, go for sure do that. Should be a fun time. All right, go ahead and get into your prediction for us this season with Maryland, Jordan. Let us know what you're thinking.
So we're known for our hot takes over here, and I'm going 11-1. We're going to lose one game. That's to Ohio State. We're going to beat Michigan. We're going to beat Penn State. Penn State, I think, is vastly overrated. Every year we see Penn State struggle towards the end of the season. Michigan, I believe we're at home. We almost beat them at Michigan last year. Here comes a little turtlehead now walking in. But we will beat Michigan, and I think we will beat Penn State. I do think we will lose Ohio State. However, we got Nebraska on here. I'm actually worried about your game. It's at Nebraska. It's in between Penn State and Michigan. Death trap game. If we beat Penn State, we're going to be high on the horse going into Nebraska, and I could feel an upset brewing there.
Wow, some love there for the Cornhuskers, T-Soul. What do you think about that game and some of the other hot takes Jordan had?
For Nebraska with the Maryland game, it just depends what the season looks like. Like if Nebraska's on pace to have another 4-win season, then Maryland's going to be sitting pretty to come in and beat them in that game. If Nebraska is competing for the West, which is very possible because there's not very many strong, like elite teams in the West, I would say there's a lot of strong teams, not elite. If Nebraska's competing with those guys, then it's, possible that they're going to be ready for Maryland coming to town. But I do believe that this season is the season for Maryland to make some noise. I'm with you there. I love their quarterback. I think they're going to have an offensive star power this season. And actually, I'm the guy of hot takes on our show. I'm picking Maryland to finish third in the East. I think they're going to surpass one of the other three. My prediction is Penn State, but I think the other one could be Ohio State. I don't know that they're going to pass Michigan this year.
Yeah, my the biggest takeaway I think as Terps fans, and what a lot of people don't realize, Maryland has not won 10 games in 2 decades. We have had some rough years with the Randy Etzels and, of course, the DJ Durkin trial. Is from that tree branch of Ralph Region, and he's definitely got Maryland's swag back. We're bringing back the old uniforms. I think that popped off this week. I know the script popped off a couple weeks ago, but they're bringing back the black. So Maryland is a team to watch, and Locks is starting to bring depth because for years our issue was we had a lot of good individuals, Stephon Diggs, so forth, individual players. We didn't have the depth. Now we're bringing the depth with some studs. I'm telling you, it's going to be fun to watch. And the transfer from Tennessee, Mr. Phillips, he's a big boy. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Maryland this year.
Hey, I had Tuatila Tagovailoa in my first team for the Big Ten this season over JJ McCarthy. I just love what he brings, and I think that he is a difference maker at quarterback. I think he is one of those guys that you put him in the game and he can really, really show what he can do, has a lot of arm talent, and I think his weapons around him, like you said, are a little bit better than people give him credit for. Could we be looking at a Heisman season for Tulia Tagovailoa?
Absolutely. If Maryland's going to go 11-1, it's going to be because, and I'm going to help you out. Everybody struggles with the name. Everybody knows his brother. It's either we call him Baby Tua, we call him TT, and every once in a while he earns the right of Talia, his actual name. Yeah. So Baby TT or Baby, it's the way to go. It just saves everybody the trouble of trying to pronounce them. But if Maryland is 11-1, I guarantee you he's in talk for a Heisman because some things have gone very well for Maryland if we're sitting here at 11-1.
Well, and I think the name recognition there too, like you said, just the story of another Tagovailoa coming in and helping out with that. So do you see a path for the Heisman, T-Sol? Is there any path there possible, you think?
I think that there's always potential for a path because he seems to be the quarterback who has potential to play on Sundays. But I don't believe that the Big Ten is going to be winning any Heismans this year with quarterback. I think the Big Ten this season is just kind of outclassed by some of the other conferences, especially the Pac-12. But, a lot of those guys are going to be joining the Big Ten next year anyways.
Very true, very true. Now, we do have a matchup between you guys at Nebraska on week 11. So what are we thinking there, guys? Do you guys agree that Maryland's going to come out on top? Do you guys think the other one's going to come out on top? What are we thinking there? Start with you, Jordan.
Well, like he said earlier, it all depends what Nebraska's looking at. If Nebraska only has like 4 wins going to that game and Maryland is doing, maybe they're not one-loss team, maybe 1 or 2 losses, but if they're the more better team going late in the season, I think Maryland wins that. However, if Nebraska's like 5 wins, this could be playing for a bowl game. Maryland comes off a big win versus Penn State. I'll be a little nervous going into Nebraska.
What say you, T-Sol?
Yeah, it's just I could see it going either way. I mean, there's just so many question marks. I would be shocked if this is like a 3 or 4 touchdown win by either side. I think this is going to be, a pretty high scoring game. I bet you it's like 35-30 or, 35-28, something in that range. I just don't know who's going to win that game. It's just Nebraska has a lot of question marks. And then I think Maryland has to stay healthy as well.
Let me ask you this. November 11th in Nebraska, looking at temperature wise.
You're probably looking, it'll be cold. Nebraska a lot of times has like these random games where there's just like 50-mile-per-hour winds. So you could look at that. I know a couple of years ago, or more than a couple of years ago, it was probably like 6 or 7 years ago, Maryland came to town and it was snowing in November. Nebraska's just kind of a question mark because it could be 60 degrees. It's just kind of random.
Yeah, I can see it now. We're gonna come off that win against Penn State. Book that win. Book it. And we're going to walk in Nebraska. It's going to be a mist rain. It's going to be miserable. You think it's going to be high scoring? I'll go with low scoring. And Maryland escapes with like a field goal. I do agree. It's going to be a close game no matter what. It's high scoring, low scoring. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a battle.
And I think that kind of game really fits Hemby too. You get Hemby in there, and Anthony Grant last year was the leading rusher for Nebraska, but I think I heard talk this week he might not even be the starter. So Nebraska might have a deeper running back room than we realize out there. I'm here for a game like that, guys. I would be so ready for just a slush fest of ground and pound and have the defenses really be tested. So all right, hey, any final thoughts from you guys for Maryland football this season?
No, I mean, my biggest thing. Oh, good, Scully.
No, I was just gonna say, not for me. I'm just excited for Baby Tua, as he said. I think he's gonna have a great year, and I'm excited to see if Maryland's ready to take that push and actually contend with some of the better teams and hang with them at least. Don't lose them by 4 touchdowns. Hang with them. Play till the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's the biggest. Hang with them. Show that you belong in the Big Ten. And, of course, I'm not going to finish a segment without giving a shout-out to Mr. Dante Trader. He's right down the road from us, dual athlete, lacrosse and football starter for both. My man's going to put on, and he's a sleeper to watch for the Defensive Player of the Year.
All right, good deal. Hey, thanks so much for coming on, guys. We are going to say goodbye to T-Soul and Jordan. Thanks to them for coming on. And we're going to bring Brant back in here as we end the show. Just talk a little bit about the CFP and what that looks like. Last year was the first time the Big Ten got 2 teams into the into the college football playoffs. Now it didn't end the way we wanted to, but it was a pretty exciting year. So my thought is, Brant, what would happen if we run into this scenario that a lot of people seem to like with the 11-1 Penn State, 11-1 Michigan, 11-1 Ohio State? Can we see 3 teams from the Big Ten in the college football playoffs? What do you think happens?
I mean, you're going to need absolute chaos for that to happen. But I do think that those 3 teams are potentially 3 of the top 4 most talented teams in all of college football entering this season. I mean, yeah, I like that scenario to happen. I think it probably will, in all honesty, where all 3 of those teams are going 11-1. But for that to happen and to get all 3 into the playoffs, you're going to need a lot of cannibalization within the other conferences, like what happened in the Pac-12 last year, where you've got no undefeated team, no team with 1 loss. Everyone's got 2 or 3 losses, and that's a really deep conference there too. So it could happen again. ACC, you're going to need Florida State and Clemson both to lose 2 games, which it's going to be tough for that to happen, but there's a possibility. Big 12, same thing. You've got like Texas. You always have a surprise team kind of coming out and competing in the Big 12 as well. It's really tough to say who's going to be at the top of that conference this year, but that's one that easily could cannibalize itself with the top team having 2 losses. And then the SEC, you're going to need Georgia to just run right through that conference, and the next best team, whether that be Alabama, LSU, to also have 2 losses.
For sure. I look at what has happened in the past, and honestly, if Alabama runs in the same scenario they were in again with 2 losses and they're sitting at 5 or something like that, as much as I would love to see Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all in the college football playoffs, I just get the feeling like they're going to put Alabama in over one of these 1-loss Big Ten teams. You've got the national media out there saying that 8 games in the SEC is harder than 9 games in the Big Ten. That's BS. That's not true, but that's what they say, and so of course that's what the AP poll voters and the College Football Playoff Committee are going to be listening to more so than anything else. And I think it's bogus, but the biggest question is not just can they get 3 in, can Michigan get over this bowl hump that they've been on? I think that they are like tied for second for the longest current bowl game losing streak out there. I mean, Brant, what is going on with the Wolverines? Can they get over this hump anytime soon?
My answer there is no. We haven't seen it. I mean, they're returning a lot of players this year. They have one of the most talented rosters top to bottom in college football. But can J.J. McCarthy and Jim Harbaugh lead the team to a big win? Obviously, aside from Ohio State, they've won that one the past few years, and that's been pretty significant for them. But when it comes to bowl games, they just can't do it, and I don't see like the power there to go in and do it this year.
Well, my biggest advice, if Jim Harbaugh came into this podcast and said, JR, what do you think about the bowl games and what do you think I should do? So he's probably not going to listen to it. But my biggest advice for Jim Harbaugh would be you are the team now, right? You are slated as the second best team in the nation. People think you're great. People think you're talented. Stop the trickery. Stop playing cute. Stop this stuff. Like I look at last year with the TCU game, the very first time they were in the red zone, 4th down, what'd they do? They tried to run this cute little trick play, Statue of Liberty. That's not what it was, but that's the first trick play that comes to my mind. But they tried to run this cute little trick play. And then when they get on the goal line, which, was bogus, they should have had a touchdown there on that catch. But it is what it is. It's the game. It happens. They try to give it to either a current linebacker or an ex-linebacker there at the goal line when you have Donovan Edwards. And I'm thinking to myself, man, stop with the cute stuff. You have the talent. You have the team. Make it happen. Don't get too cute with it. I don't know. I feel like Jim Harbaugh needs to kind of level up his own mentality about his team, which it sounds like he's been doing in the offseason, but level that up and say, we are the big dog and let's play like it. What do you think, Brant?
I completely agree there. Like in that game against TCU last year, Michigan was clearly the more talented team top to bottom. They had kind of overpowered on both lines, but when it came down to it, like you said, Harbaugh was getting too cute, running all these trick plays and whatnot. McCarthy had a few interceptions early on that kind of buried them early. And if you're doing that kind of stuff, you're not going to win the big games when it comes down to it. You just got to stick to your game plan. I mean, they've got an insane offensive line, insane running back room, great defensive line, great front seven, great secondary too. They're just loaded everywhere. If they stick to the game plan, just pound the ball on the ground, overpower in the trenches, it's going to be tough to beat them. But if they don't do that, that's where they've been losing.
Yep. Yeah. And let that Joe Moore offensive line do its work. You don't have to have the power back there if you already have the power in front of them. Just let them do their work. All right. Last thing we'll talk about, and then we'll get out of here. It's been a long show. It's been a marathon, but it's been a lot of fun. Seems like it's just flown by. So Brant, we talk a lot about Penn State, talk a lot about Ohio State, Michigan for the playoffs. If there was one team from the West, right, we have to talk through some of these winners that they talked about, Iowa, Wisconsin, possibly Nebraska. If there's one team from the West that they've been talking about to win the West, they win the Big Ten championship, who is it that could make the college football playoffs?
My pick there, and this could change with recent news coming out about the gambling suspensions, but my pick as of right now, if Quinn Schulte and Jamari Harris are not suspended, is the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think their defense is top 3 in the Big Ten. Their offense is going to take a huge step forward with McNamara in there. The offensive line wasn't great last year, but another year to gel together. They were young. And then bringing in some weapons at receiver and at tight end. I think they can take a huge step forward on offense. I think their defense is going to be, what it always is. And if they can, the big thing that was brought up on the show today is they don't have Ohio State and they don't have Michigan on their schedule. Having that schedule makes it a lot easier to kind of power through the West without really having a tough game aside from Penn State crossover wise. So you go and you win those West games. You can maybe lose one and go 11-1, and then you get to Indy. All you got to do is knock off whoever comes out from the East, which obviously is a tough feat. But if you're there, all you got to do is win the game. And at that point, college football is crazy. There's been crazier things that happen. If they go 12-1, they're in the playoff.
Right. Well, we've seen it before in the Big Ten. Certain teams just put together the game of the season and just really come through and take out one of these top dogs. It's happened to Ohio State with Purdue years ago. Iowa's done it. Michigan State did it. A lot of stuff has happened like that. This is why we love college football, right? The craziness of it happening. I remember last year we were all talking about the predictions and stuff, and I wrote some of those down from some of these national media members, and they just they all get flown out the window because college football is just impossible to predict. You can't predict it, but you love it. You love watching it. Unless, of course, you're listening to Big Bookie, then they're able to, get you good bets and help you out with that. So I won't disparage their bets, but But yeah, so hey, it's been a fun show. I've had a good time talking to everybody, learned a lot. Brant, you have any final thoughts before we head out of here?
No, nothing from me, but I guess all I have to say is if you stuck around and listen to this whole marathon here, you're a real one. You're a big Big Ten fan. So appreciate you listening. Definitely make sure you're following along with the Big Ten Huddle, subscribed, and go check out your favorite team's podcast as well within the Big Banter Network. Lots of great stuff coming this season. Thank you for listening.
For sure. And we are football loaded right now, but we do have some basketball podcasts for teams, and we're looking to increase that catalog as well. So be checking back as we add more podcasts and we increase that reach over there as well. Thank you so much for listening. Like Brant said, you're a real one. Have a great day, whatever day it is, and looking forward to the season.